4 years. 4 silent, aching years since Kiara Nix walked away from the only man she had ever loved and from the version of herself that believed love could conquer reality. 4 years of rebuilding her life piece by fragile piece in a city that seemed too large and too lonely without him. Now, at 28, Kiara was someone new, or at least she tried to be. She had a stable job at Huxtech, one of the country's leading tech corporations. She had her own modest apartment with peeling paint but warm sunlight. And she had Lucky, her small mutt with mismatched ears, who loved her more faithfully than any human ever had. Lucky was also the reason she was running late. "Lucky, please," Kiara groaned, trying to pull her pant leg free as the dog clung to it like a toddler refusing daycare. "We talked about this. Mommy has to go to work." Lucky barked, a stubborn bark, a bark that meant over my dead body. Kiara huffed and reached for her coffee mug when her phone buzzed. A company-wide alert flashed across the screen. "Welcome to our new CEO. All employees must report to the 48th floor conference hall." Kiara stared at the message. "Huxtech changes CEOs every year," she muttered to Lucky. "This one won't be any different." But she couldn't shake an odd feeling creeping up her spine, like a storm brewing somewhere she couldn't see. Still, she shook it off, fed Lucky, and rushed toward the elevator of her apartment building. Her reflection stared back at her from the metal doors, a beautiful black woman with soft curls pinned back warm brown skin, sharp, intelligent eyes, and despite everything, a kindness she'd never quite learned how to hide. She looked composed. Inside, she was anything but. By the time she reached the 48th floor, the hall was already crowded. Employees buzzed with curiosity, whispering rumors about who the new CEO might be. Kiara slipped inside quietly, hoping to blend into the sea of faces. The moment the doors closed, the room lights dimmed slightly, and a single spotlight illuminated the main stage. And then he walked in. Ethan Huxley. Kiara's heart stopped. The man she'd avoided for 1 to 460 days walked onto the stage like he had stepped out of a magazine cover and into her worst or perhaps deepest fantasy. Tall, elegant, devastatingly handsome, skin like sculpted marble, eyes the same piercing blue she once drowned in. The youngest billionaire, on Forbes, 30 under 30, and the reason she left the city altogether. He looked like power wrapped in restraint, like winter wrapped in silk. He looked like like everything she tried to forget. Kiara's breath caught. Her vision tunneled. For a second, she considered that this might be some cruel hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But when Ethan spoke, his voice hit her like a physical blow. Smooth, low, resonant, unmistakably real. "Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to return to Huxtech as your new CEO." Return? Kiara felt her pulse spike. She hadn't known he'd left his father's shadow. Hadn't known he had entered the competitive world of tech leadership. Hadn't known anything about him at all. Because she had avoided every news article, every mention, every possible reminder. 4 years of intentional blindness. Now, fate ripped that blindness away. As Ethan continued his speech about innovation, restructuring new beginnings, Kiara felt the world fade. She no longer heard the murmurs around her, the clacking keyboards, or the shifting seats. There was only him. And when his eyes swept across the room and finally landed on hers, her breath fractured. His gaze locked onto her like a magnet snapping home after being denied too long. He stiffened, just slightly, just enough for her to notice. Then came the twist. Ethan stepped closer to the microphone, cleared his throat, and said, "As of today, the administrative department will undergo immediate restructuring. All current assistants will be reassigned. I will appoint one temporary executive assistant myself." A slight pause. Sharp. Intentional. And that person is Kiara Nix. The room erupted in whispers. Kiara froze. The blood drained from her face. Her name spoken from his lips sent knives through her ribs. How did he know she worked here? Why would he ask for her? And why did her heart betray her by wanting to leap toward him? Kiara forced herself to breathe. This had to be some administrative mistake, some coincidence, some cruel joke of the universe. But Ethan's eyes never left her. He knew exactly what he was doing. When the meeting adjourned, she tried to slip toward the exit. But Ethan reached her first. He cut through the crowd, effortlessly tall enough and commanding enough that people parted without thinking. His scent, clean wood midnight air, something she remembered too well, hit her before he even stood directly in front of her. "Kiara," he said softly. Her name in his voice was a home she'd burned down years ago. She kept her chin high. She refused to let him see the tremor in her fingers. "Mr. Huxley," she managed cold and neutral. "Congratulations." A sad, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "You don't have to call me that." "I do now," she countered. "You're my boss." His jaw clenched barely, but enough. "Kiara," he said again, quieter. 4 years ago, you disappeared. No goodbye. No message. Nothing." Her throat tightened. The old wound she thought had scarred over began to ache again. "That was a long time ago," she said. "Not to me." The words sliced her defenses open. Before she could reply, Ethan's voice dropped further, so low, only she could hear. "Kiara, that night you left, you stood outside my building." Her lungs forgot how to breathe. He continued, eyes heavy, with something she'd never seen in him before, regret. "I saw you," he whispered. "I saw you standing there." Kiara's pulse thundered in her ears. "No," she murmured. "You couldn't have. I left before you left, because I was too late." The room emptied around them. The world shrank into a silent, suspended moment. Kiara felt her chest tighten, memories clawing up her father in the hospital, the threat, the lies she was told, the pain of choosing between love and survival. But Ethan wasn't finished. His voice thickened with old sorrow. "I thought I'd lost my mind," he confessed. "I thought I imagined you, but I didn't. You were there." And when I got downstairs, he paused, took a breath that shook just barely. "You were gone." Kiara's heartbeat pounded painfully, cracking open parts of her heart she'd locked away. She had believed he didn't show up. She had believed he'd chosen someone else. But he had been there. He had been too late, just as she had been too scared. Everything she'd told herself for 4 years, shattered. "Ethan," she whispered, voice trembling. His gaze softened, but underneath lay a fierce determination she remembered too well. "This time," he said, stepping an inch closer, "I'm not letting you disappear again." Her breath caught. Her spine tingled. The ground felt unsteady beneath her feet. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to scream. She wanted to collapse into his arms. She wanted no. She couldn't let herself want anything. Lucky was waiting at home. Her new life was waiting. Her fragile peace was waiting. But fate wasn't done with her. Just as she gathered her bag to retreat, Ethan glanced down. His gaze sharpened. There was a black envelope sticking halfway out of her bag. She hadn't noticed it earlier. "Kiara," he said, voice dropping into danger. "What is that?" She blinked. I don't know. Someone must have slipped." He pulled the envelope gently but firmly, opening it, despite her protest. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with a grainy photograph of Kiara leaving her apartment that morning. And a line cut across the bottom, scratched in thick ink, "You shouldn't have come back." Kiara's skin went cold. Ethan's expression transformed, blue eyes turning sharp as steel. "Who sent this?" he demanded. "I don't know," Kiara whispered, but deep down, she feared she did. Ethan stepped closer, protective rage radiating from him. "Whoever it is," he said, voice low and dangerous, "they'll have to go through me." Kiara swallowed hard. She had survived 4 years without him. 4 years of silence. 4 years of pretending she didn't miss the man whose eyes still held her captive. But now, between the past she ran from and the man standing in front of her, something dark was closing in. Something watching her. Something waiting. And Kiara realized this wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of a storm. A storm only she and Ethan could survive together, or not at all. The next morning arrived far too quickly. Kiara barely slept. Her mind replayed Ethan's voice, his confession, that photograph. He showed her proof he had been there that night long ago. Proof that her pain wasn't built on indifference, but on miscommunication and cruel interference. But she didn't have time to drown in the past. At 6:12 a.m., an email from HR hit her inbox. "You have been reassigned to the role of temporary executive assistant to the CEO, effective immediately. Report to level 60 at 8 a.m. No request. No negotiation. No choice." Kiara exhaled a curse soft enough not to wake Lucky, loud enough to release some of the pressure coiling inside her chest. Being Ethan's assistant was the last thing she wanted. Being near him again, that was a danger she wasn't ready to face. But she had rent, responsibilities, a life to maintain. She couldn't quit, not now. So she dressed with mechanical precision, soft cream blouse, charcoal pencil skirt, hair tied back tight enough to feel like armor. Lucky tilted his head at her, sensing the tension. "I'll be back early," Kiara whispered, rubbing his silky ears. "Be good today." Lucky barked once, as if promising to try. Kiara left the apartment with a heart too heavy for someone who had sworn she'd moved on. The executive floor of Hux Tech was a world of glass and steel, cold, pristine, too quiet. It smelled faintly of ozone and expensive coffee. The kind of floor built for men like Ethan Huxley. Kiara stopped before the tall glass door marked CEO Ethan Huxley. Her pulse hammered. Her hand trembled just slightly. She inhaled, squared her shoulders, and knocked. "Come in." His voice, rich, smooth, too familiar. She stepped inside. Ethan stood near the window, overlooking the city skyline. Morning sunlight carved gold outlines along his jaw. His navy suit fit so perfectly it almost looked sculpted on. Every part of him radiated power, discipline, control. Every part of her wanted to back away from him. He turned eyes locking onto hers with a quiet intensity that unsettled her to the core. "Close the door," he said softly, "and sit." Kiara obeyed before she could stop herself. Damn him. He had always had that effect, an orbit she was too easily pulled into. She slipped into the seat across from his desk, spine straight-faced neutral. "Ethan," she said firmly, "we need to talk about why you," he interrupted gently, as if finishing her sentence. "Why I chose you, yes," she replied. This wasn't professional. There are dozens of qualified assistants in the company. His expression was steady, not arrogant, not smug, just resolute. "I chose you because I trust you. A beat. And because I owe you answers." Kiara's laugh was sharp brittle. 4 years of silence, and suddenly you want to explain. "You didn't give me a chance," he said quietly. The temperature in the room shifted, tension thick enough to taste. She opened her mouth, but the words caught halfway. Ethan reached into his drawer and placed a thin folder on the desk between them. Inside lay the photograph, Kiara standing under his apartment building's streetlight 4 years ago, the night she tried to return. Her stomach twisted violently. She remembered every second of that night, the cold air biting her skin, the desperate hope in her chest, the way her heart broke when Ethan's mother found her and hissed words that shattered everything. She remembered running away, believing Ethan chose someone else, believing she wasn't enough. Ethan touched the photo, gently, voice low. "I was on my way down," he murmured. "I swear it." But my father collapsed that same night. I had to get him to the hospital. By the time I came back, you were gone. Kiara's throat tightened painfully. He wasn't lying. She could hear truth in the edges of his voice, the same truth he once used when whispering promises against her skin. "You didn't call," she whispered. "You changed your number," he replied. "And every place you lived at afterward, you moved again before I could reach you." Her chest tightened. She had run too hard, too far, without looking back. Ethan exhaled slowly, gaze locked on her. "Those minutes cost us 4 years," he said. "But I'm done letting time take anything else from us." Kiara felt something crush inside her, old longing, old wounds, old love she had no right to feel. Before she could respond, the office door swung open without warning. Nathaniel Rowan Huxtex, vice president, strolled in with the casual swagger of someone who was always too clever and too observant. He froze when he saw Kiara sitting opposite the CEO. "Oh." Nathaniel raised a brow. "So the rumors were true. New assistant." Kiara stiffened, but forced a polite smile. "Good morning, Vice President Rowan. Congratulations on the promotion," he said, though his tone dripped mischief. "Working directly under my dear CEO is a privilege and a hazard." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Nate, do you need something?" "Only to remind you," Nathaniel said, leaning against the doorframe, "that returning to the company after your little incident isn't going to be easy. People remember scandals." Kiara's head whipped toward Ethan. "Scandal," she echoed. Ethan shot Nathaniel a glare that could slice steel. Nathaniel winked at Kiara. Then he left as abruptly as he came. The door shut. Silence expanded. Kiara stared at Ethan, heart pounding. "There was a scandal," she asked softly. "You left the company." Why? Ethan raked a hand through his hair. One of the few signs he was actually stressed. "It doesn't matter now," he murmured. "What matters is..." Her phone buzzed violently. Kiara glanced down. A text from her building manager. Your dog has been barking non-stop. Someone is standing outside your apartment door. Her blood went cold. Not again. Not after the black envelope yesterday. She stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. I need to go home. Ethan was already moving. I'm coming with you. Kiara lifted her chin. No, this is my problem. Kiara, Ethan said firmly. Stepping closer, the last time you dealt with something alone, I lost you for 4 years. Don't expect me to let that happen again. His words hit something deep inside her. He shouldn't care, but he did. And she hated and loved that part of him. She swallowed. Fine, she said quietly. But don't misinterpret this. It changes nothing between us. A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips, sad, but knowing. Everything has already changed. They walked to the elevator together. The air inside felt heavy electric. Kiara stood stiffly in one corner, arms crossed. Ethan stood inches away, not touching her, but close enough she could feel the heat radiating from him. Her heartbeat wouldn't calm. The elevator descended slowly, too slowly. Why did you really come back? Kiara asked softly, 4 years later. Why now? Ethan's eyes met hers in the reflection of the chrome doors. For the company, he answered. But then he turned his head, gaze dropping to her lips for a fraction of a second. And for you. Kiara's breath hitched. Don't, she whispered. Don't say things like that. Why? Because it scares you. No, she said, because it's unfair. He moved one step closer, still not touching her. Yet the air crackled. Kiara, he murmured. Nothing about you has ever been unfair. Losing you was. The elevator chimed. Level 1. The doors slid open. She stepped out first. He followed. The city outside was bright, bustling, loud. But for Kiara, the world had narrowed to a single truth. Someone was watching her. Someone had been at her door. And Ethan, despite everything between them, wasn't stepping aside. As they got into his car, Kiara stared out the window, heart pounding with fear she didn't want to admit. Not fear of the stranger outside her apartment. Fear of the man sitting beside her. Fear of how easily he could crack her open again. Ethan glanced at her. Kiara, he said quietly. We'll figure out who's doing this. We, she repeated. Yes, he answered. His voice left no room for argument. This time, you don't get to face anything alone. Kiara closed her eyes just for a moment. She didn't want to rely on him. She didn't want to care. She didn't want to fall. But somewhere deep inside, a small, painful truth stirred. She had never stopped wanting him. And that terrified her more than any stranger at her door. Lucky's frantic barking could be heard from the hallway before Kiara even touched the lock. Ethan stood at her shoulder, tense alert, his hand hovering near her lower back, as if ready to pull her behind him at the slightest threat. The hallway was quiet, but Lucky's cries sliced through the silence like alarm bells. Kiara unlocked the door. The moment it cracked open, Lucky hurled himself at her legs, barking so wildly his whole body shook. Shh, Lucky baby. It's okay, Kiara whispered, scooping him up. But from the way his tail bristled straight up and his gaze darted toward the threshold, Kiara knew Lucky didn't feel safe, not even with her. Ethan knelt beside them, extending a hand. Hey, buddy, he murmured. Lucky froze, then shoved his face into Ethan's palm and licked him frantically, whining like a child who had finally found his missing parent. Kiara's heart squeezed. "He remembers you," she murmured. Ethan's gaze lifted to hers, softening for just a moment. "No," he said quietly. "He remembers the home he once had." Something in the way he said it, gentle but aching, made Kiara's breath catch. Before she could respond, Ethan suddenly straightened a posture rigid. "What is that?" he asked. Kiara followed his gaze. There on the floor, just inside her doorway, lay a plain black envelope. No stamp, no name. Just a single sentence scrawled across it. "Keep pretending. I know who you are." A pulse of cold fear struck her spine. "No," Kiara whispered. "Not again." Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped forward before she could react. "Don't touch," she started, but he had already snatched it from the floor. He opened it with deliberate calm, too calm for the rage flickering beneath his skin. Inside was a printed photograph. Kiara's breath hitched. It was a picture of her walking up the stairs to her apartment the night before. Taken from behind, taken from close, much too close. Ethan's grip tightened until the edges of the paper bent and crumpled. His voice, when it came, was low and dangerous. "How long has someone been watching you?" I don't know," Kiara stammered. But she did know. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth she didn't want to face. Someone had found her again. Someone who wasn't supposed to. She forced herself to breathe. "It has nothing to do with you," she said quietly. Ethan turned to her, blue eyes blazing. "It has everything to do with me." Her chest squeezed. "Ethan, 4 years ago you vanished into the dark," he said, voice thick with something she recognized as hurt. "And now someone wants to drag you back into that same darkness." Kiara flinched. He didn't know. He didn't know what his mother had done, what Kiara had been forced to choose, what price she'd paid for her father's life. And she didn't want him to know. Not yet. Not ever. Lucky interrupted, barking toward the balcony with sudden ferocity. Ethan moved instantly. "Stay here," he ordered, stepping past her. He walked to the sliding glass door, slid it open, and looked down to the street below. 12 floors of distance, and yet a perfect vantage point for anyone watching. Kiara followed him quietly, heart pounding. "What do you see?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him. Far below, a figure in a dark hoodie walked briskly down the sidewalk. Too briskly, like someone who knew they'd been spotted. Within seconds, the figure vanished around a corner. Ethan turned back to her expression, carved from ice. "You're not staying here," he said. Kiara stiffened. "Yes, I am." "No, Kiara." He exhaled sharply. "Someone is watching you. They know where you live. You're not safe." "I can't run again," she whispered. Ethan hesitated. That gave him pause. Not fear, not stubbornness, but something emotional. Something she hadn't shown him in years. He took a step toward her. "What happened to you?" he asked, voice softer now, too tender. Kiara looked away. "I'm not letting this happen again," Ethan said. "Pack a bag. You'll stay with me." "No." Ethan blinked. "No," he echoed like it was a foreign word to him. Kiara crossed her arms, grounding herself. "I won't run," she said. "I won't hide. and I won't let anyone, including you, decide what happens to me. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled, barely, softly, like he was seeing her for the first time. God, Kiara, he breathed. You've changed. She forced her gaze away. Good, she muttered. That was the point. He stepped closer. And yet he murmured, You're still the bravest person I have ever known. Her throat tightened. Before she could respond, Ethan straightened again. Fine, he said. You won't leave. Correct, she replied. But I'm staying? What, no? Absolutely not. I'll sleep on the sofa. No. Kiara, he said, tone shifting into that deep seriousness she remembered all too well. Someone is stalking you. Someone who thinks they know you. His gaze held hers. I'm not leaving you alone. The way he said it, calm, purposeful, protective, pulled something inside her painfully tight. Lucky barked once, as if agreeing. Kiara groaned. Just one night, she said. Ethan's lips curved in a slow, devastating smile. One night, he echoed. That's all I need. She rolled her eyes and turned away so he wouldn't see the heat crawling up her neck. Don't make this weird, she muttered. I'm not the one making it weird, he countered, amused. Kiara glared. He lifted his hands in surrender. Fine, he said. I'll behave. She doubted that. Within minutes, he had laid out a blanket on her sofa and sat down, elbows on his knees, watching her as she fed Lucky and cleaned up her kitchen. He didn't stare with intense desire. He didn't stare like he wanted to break her defenses. Not tonight. He stared like he was memorizing her, like every movement mattered, like he had missed even the smallest version of her. Once Lucky curled up asleep, Kiara finally sank onto the armchair across from him. Only the glow of a small lamp filled the room. It felt strangely intimate, him in her space, her walls lowered ever so slightly, the quiet between them thick with all the unsaid words of 4 lost years. Ethan leaned back, gazing at her. Kiara, he said softly, whoever left that envelope, they're not just watching you. They're sending a message. She looked at him unsettled. What kind of message? The kind that comes from someone who thinks you owe them something. Her breathing stuttered. I don't owe anyone, she whispered. Ethan's eyes softened. Accept yourself. Silence fell again. A silence full of warmth and tension and something dangerously close to longing. Kiara rubbed her temple, exhausted. You should sleep, she said. I will, he murmured, once I'm sure you're safe. I'm fine. No, Ethan said quietly. You're scared. She wanted to deny it, but Lucky whimpered in his sleep, curling closer to her foot. Kiara's voice came out softer than she intended. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me again. Ethan's gaze sharpened. What do you mean again? Her heart lurched. She'd said too much. Ethan sat forward, brows knitting. Kiara, he said, voice low. What happened? I'm tired, she whispered, quickly, looking away. Let's not do this tonight. He wanted to push. She could see it, but he stopped himself. Instead, he stood slowly, draped the blanket around his shoulders, and glanced at her with a tenderness that made her chest hurt. Get some rest, he murmured. I'll be right here. She nodded, but sleep didn't come easily. Not for her, not for him. Every creak of the building made Kiara's heart jump. Every shift of shadows on the wall made Ethan sit up straighter. And sometime after midnight, when the city quieted and even Lucky stopped stirring, a soft tap echoed at the window. just once. Then again. Ethan was on his feet instantly. Kiara froze. The night outside the glass seemed suddenly alive, breathing, watching. The darkness had found them. Morning arrived gently, too gently, for a night filled with shadows tapping at windows and the fear of being watched. Kiara woke to the aroma of coffee drifting through her tiny apartment. Not just any coffee, mocha. She blinked at the ceiling for a moment, disoriented, before turning her head. In her kitchen, far too small for a man like him, stood Ethan. He looked painfully out of place, yet somehow completely real. Sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled, trying to navigate her inexpensive coffee machine as if it were a piece of alien technology. He glanced over when he sensed her awake. A slow, soft smile curved his lips. "You still like mocha, right?" Kiara's breath caught in her throat. 4 years. 4 long, brutal years. He still remembered. Her heartbeat fluttered, then tightened with something she didn't want to name. She sat up, tucking the blanket around her, watching him fumble with the mug like he was afraid it might explode. "You don't have to do that," she said quietly. "I know." He offered her the steaming cup. "But I wanted to." She took it, fingers brushing his by accident, or maybe not by accident. Something electric pulsed between them. Before anything else could be said, her phone rang, startling her. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Her mother always called early. She never really slept through the night since Kiara's father died. Kiara answered, softening her voice instinctively. "Hi, Mom." "Kiara, sweetheart. Are you okay?" "I don't know why, but last night I had a terrible feeling." Kiara's gaze flicked toward Ethan, who stood silently near the sink, watching her with an unreadable expression. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired. Work has been stressful. Baby, if something is wrong—" "Mom," Kiara said gently. "I'm okay. Really. Try to rest, all right?" Her mother sighed, unconvinced, but exhausted. "Call me tonight. I will." She hung up. The moment her phone lowered, she felt Ethan behind her, not touching, but close. Too close. "Kiara," he said softly, "I need to ask you something." She turned. The weight in his eyes hit her like a wall. "Your father," Ethan said slowly. "Are you sure he died from illness?" Her entire body went still. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. "Ethan," she whispered, "don't." But he pressed on, careful but relentless. "The night you left, you were terrified, and then a month later, your father was gone. When I looked at the medical reports last night, you looked at what she snapped." Ethan didn't flinch. There were inconsistencies, missing forms, altered timestamps. "Kiara, something wasn't right. I could feel it." Her stomach twisted violently. The anonymous letter she received years ago flashed in her mind, the one she had burned the moment she'd read it. "If you want your father to live, leave Ethan Huxley and never come back." He never knew. No one ever knew. She felt herself fading, like she was sinking into memories she spent years burying. "I don't want to talk about this," Kiara managed, voice cracking. Ethan stepped closer. "I know my family pushed you away," he said quietly. "I know my mother." "Stop," she cut in sharply. "You don't know anything." Pain flickered across his face. "Then tell me," he said. Tell me what really happened. Her heart lunged painfully. I can't. Why? Because it hurts, she whispered. Silence fell heavy, raw, suffocating. Ethan's jaw tightened as if trying to hold back his own storm. Kiara, he said, voice barely above a whisper, I lost you once. I'm not letting fear or secrets take you from me again. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes, but refusing to fall. You think this is about fear, she whispered. Ethan, you don't understand the kind of pain Then let me understand. His voice was pleading now. Pleading. Her resolve cracked, but didn't break. She stepped back. No, not today. He closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. Then I'll find the truth myself. She froze. What? He opened his eyes, and there was no hesitation in them. You deserve to live without ghosts, he said. So I'll go after the ghosts. Why? Kiara whispered, breath trembling. Why would you put yourself through this? His answer was immediate, soft, but devastatingly sincere. Because I love you. Her breath hitched. Her heart clenched. She laughed, but it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief twisted with grief. Love me, she said, voice trembling. Ethan, you don't even know half of what happened. You don't know what it cost me. Then let me pay some of that cost, he whispered. Let me stand where you had to stand alone. Kiara shook her head again, too quickly. You can't fix what's already broken. Then let me hold it, Ethan murmured, stepping closer until you can. She had no response. None that didn't break her open. Before she had to answer, Ethan's phone vibrated sharply. He pulled it out, and Kiara saw the name flash across the screen. Nathaniel, urgent. Ethan frowned and answered. What is it? Kiara watched his expression shift, confusion first, then anger, then something colder and much more dangerous. Finally, he lowered the phone, slowly, looking at her with a tension that made her skin prickle. Kiara, he said, voice low, we have a problem. Her stomach dropped. What now? A story just hit the internal company network. His tone was tight with fury. It claims you were part of a criminal hacking group. Kiara's world tilted. What she whispered, Ethan, I've never... I know, he snapped, then softened. I know, Kiara. Panic surged through her veins. Everyone in the company will see it, she said, horrified. My department, HR. God's security, Ethan. I could be fired. Not while I'm CEO, he said fiercely. But who would even write something like that? Kiara whispered. Why now? Someone was painting a target on her, someone who wanted to destroy her reputation, or erase her entirely. She thought of the black envelope, the tapping on the window, the figure in the hoodie. Someone hadn't just returned from her past. They had found her Achilles' heel, and they were tightening their grip. Ethan stepped forward, gripping her shoulders with both hands. Kiara, look at me. She forced herself to lift her eyes. I won't let them hurt you, he said. Not again. Not ever. Her heart broke open quietly, painfully. For the first time in 4 years, she didn't argue. And in that fragile moment, she felt something shift. Something she had been terrified to feel again, hope. But hope never comes alone. It always brings a storm behind it. And as Kiara leaned into Ethan's steady presence, she knew whoever was after her wasn't done. This was only the beginning. The storm hit Huxtech within an hour. News traveled fast inside a corporation that fed on whispers. By the time Kiara stepped into the main office, the air was thick, heavy with curiosity, speculation, and something colder, suspicion. Every conversation dropped to a hush when she walked by. Heads tilted subtly, eyes glanced, then darted away. Her skin prickled under the weight of it. A black woman accused of hacking. She didn't need anyone to say the words aloud. She felt them in every sideways look. Kiara lifted her chin higher, refusing to let her steps falter. But inside, she felt like she was carrying a ticking bomb through a room made of glass. Ethan called an emergency meeting. The conference room filled quickly. Executives, department leads, PR heads, security directors. Kiara sat beside him, back straight, palms cold, heart racing too loudly in her chest. Her presence was controversial. Her involvement, whether real or fabricated, was now a company-wide liability. Nathaniel stood near the front, expression tense. "We have a problem," he announced. "The anonymous article is spreading across every internal channel. If we don't respond, not only Kiara's reputation suffers, so does the CEO's." All eyes turned to Ethan. He didn't flinch. "We'll find the source," Ethan said, voice razor sharp. "And when we do, they'll be held accountable." PR's head, Lila Carmichael, crossed her arms. "With all due respect, Ethan, how do we respond publicly? A rumor targeting a woman of color in tech is incredibly delicate. Every misstep will be interpreted in the harshest way." Kiara's stomach twisted. Her heart sank deeper. So this was how the world saw her again. A burden, a problem, a liability. Her fingers clenched in her lap until her knuckles went white. Under the table, Ethan's hand found hers, barely a touch, just the faint brush of warm skin against skin. But she jolted like he had shocked her. "Kiara," he whispered so softly no one else could hear. "I'm here." Her chest tightened. She hated that she needed those words, hated that they soothed her, hated that after everything part of her still wanted to lean into him. She swallowed hard and kept her gaze straight ahead. The meeting continued, heavy, tense, full of theories and false leads, but Kiara barely heard any of it. Her entire world was narrowed to, who did this? Who was unraveling her life again? When the meeting adjourned, Ethan stood immediately. "We're done for now," he said. "Kiara, come with me." His tone left no room for argument. She followed him out, ignoring the gazes that clung to her like static. They didn't speak until they reached the elevator. The door slid shut behind them, sealing them into a quiet, mirrored box that amplified every breath. Silence expanded thick, suffocating. Kiara finally exhaled shakily. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that I'm being talked about like I'm a threat, like I'm a criminal, like I don't belong here." "You do belong here," Ethan said softly. She shook her head. "You can't fix this for me." "No," he agreed, "but I can stand with you." That hurt deeply, terribly, because a part of her wanted him to stand even closer. She stared ahead, hands trembling slightly. Ethan took a slow step toward her. "Kiara," he said quietly, "you can be furious with me. You can resent me. You can blame me. I won't stop you. But please." She lifted her eyes. He looked raw, unmasked, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. "Don't shut me out again." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him she wasn't shutting him out. She was protecting herself, protecting him, protecting everything she'd pieced back together. Instead, she whispered, "I don't need your protection, but I want to give it," he murmured. His voice, God, that voice slipped under her ribs and unspooled something deep within her. The elevator suddenly jerked, stopping between floors with a metallic thud. Kiara lost her balance. Ethan reacted faster than thought. He caught her waist, pulled her against him, held her like she was the most important thing he'd ever steadied. Her palms landed on his chest, feeling the rapid, solid beat of his heart. The world went silent. No gossip, no stalker, no shadows. Just the two of them, breathing the same tight breath. Kiara tilted her head up. Their faces were inches apart. His scent cedar cold air. Something familiar washed over her. Her pulse raced, her knees weakened. Her resolve crumbled. Ethan's gaze dropped to her mouth. Slowly, deliberately. "Kiara," he whispered. Her lips parted barely. His forehead touched hers. "I'm going to ask," he murmured, breath warm against her skin. "I won't take anything you don't give." She swallowed hard. He waited. Their lips were a breath apart. One small movement, one decision. That was all it would take. His voice was barely a tremor. "May I?" She didn't speak. She didn't move, but she didn't pull away. And Ethan saw it, felt it, understood it. He leaned in, just as the elevator chimed loudly and the doors slid open. A cluster of employees stood, waiting outside. They froze. Everyone stared. Kiara and Ethan sprang apart so fast it looked like they'd been caught committing a crime. Her cheeks burned. Her pulse thundered. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, utterly unfazed. "The elevator jolted," he said evenly. "I steadied her." The employees nodded too quickly, too awkwardly. No one believed him. The gossip mill would explode in minutes. Kiara stormed out of the elevator, mortified. "Kiara, wait!" Ethan called after her. She spun around. "Don't ever do that again," she hissed. "Not here, not at work, not anywhere." He didn't apologize. He didn't look ashamed. He looked at her like she was the only thing he'd ever wanted and the only thing he'd ever lost. Again, he echoed, stepping out of the elevator. "Kiara, I haven't even done anything yet." Her breath caught. The nerve, the audacity. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Ethan stepped closer, not touching, but close enough to unsettle everything inside her. "I won't pretend," he said quietly, "that I don't want you. I won't pretend I don't remember everything. And I won't pretend that I'm not going to try." Her pulse stuttered. "Stop," she whispered. "I can't," he replied. Lucky's bark suddenly rang from her phone through the apartment's camera feed, where he was pacing furiously. It felt like a warning, a reminder, a reality check. Kiara stepped back, her heart pounding and her world tilting. She was slipping, falling, weakening. And Ethan Huxley was the one place she wasn't sure she could survive falling into again. The email arrived at 3:07 p.m. Short, cold, purposeful. "Meet me on floor 51, security room. E.H." Kiara stared at the message, her stomach tightening. After the day she'd had after the elevator, the stairs, the rumors, Ethan's email felt like another omen. She almost deleted it, almost pretended she hadn't seen it. But something restless inside her, fear, curiosity, or the memory of Ethan holding her steady hours earlier, made her press the elevator button. The security floor was unusually silent. Dim lights, rows of monitors casting pale blue glow on the walls, a faint hum of servers. It felt like stepping into a secret she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Ethan stood in front of one of the giant screens, hands braced on the console. His shoulders were tense, his posture unyielding. He looked nothing like the polished CEO the world saw. This version of him was sharper, harder, and frighteningly focused. He didn't turn when she entered. Close the door. His voice was low, controlled, too controlled. Kiara obeyed. As soon as the latch clicked, Ethan hit a key. The footage played. Her apartment hallway. Lucky barking somewhere off screen. A shadowy figure walking past her door, hood up, head down, gloved hands, same height, same build. Then another clip. Different day, same figure, lingering, watching her door, waiting. A cold shiver sliced down Kiara's spine. Ethan finally turned toward her. "This is from the past 3 days," he said quietly. He showed up twice. Same angle. Same posture. Kiara stared at the screen, but the edges blurred as panic tightened her chest. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know him." Ethan's eyes sharpened, stepping closer. "Who?" She swallowed hard, her mind clawing through memories she tried to bury. The way he stands, the way he holds his shoulders. I've seen that posture before. Where Kiara hesitated, then the truth broke free. He worked at the medical center where my father was treated. Ethan went still. Her breath shook as she continued. He was one of the night shift attendants, quiet, always standing in doorways, watching more than he spoke. After my father's chart was altered, he disappeared. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard the line of his teeth strained through his cheek. "What's his name, Kiara?" "I don't know." Shame crept through her voice. "I never learned it. Everything happened so fast, and then Dad died and She stopped. She didn't want to say it, didn't want to relive the night her world fractured. Ethan stepped closer, voice deep and grave. "Someone changed your father's medical records," he said. "Someone tampered with treatment instructions. That's not random. That's not accidental." Kiara forced herself to meet his eyes. "Ethan, this isn't your—" "Yes," he cut in. "It is." She shook her head, desperate. "No, this is my past, my mistake, my burden, your burden." Ethan's voice cracked with fury. "Kiara, someone stalked you, someone threatened you, someone pulled strings in a hospital to manipulate you into leaving me. And you think this is something you should carry alone?" Kiara flinched as though struck. She had spent 4 years believing the only way to survive was solitude, silence, strength without softness. She wasn't ready for someone to stand beside her, let alone fight for her, especially not Ethan. She turned away, blinking hard. "Please," she whispered, "don't get involved." Ethan exhaled long and slow, but not defeated. He pulled a thin folder from the console and placed it on the table. "This is everything I dug up from 4 years ago," he said. "Your father's case, his chart updates, termination orders, medical signatures, administrative timestamps." Kiara's stomach twisted. She didn't want to know. She didn't want to read another file that said her father's life ended because she made the wrong choice or the right one at the wrong time. Ethan flipped the folder open anyway. "One thing is very clear," he said. "The person who instructed the hospital to stop treatment wasn't a doctor." Her breath froze. "What?" He met her eyes. It wasn't a doctor, Kiara. Her heart pounded like a drum. Her nails dug into her palms. Then who? She whispered. Ethan swallowed something breaking in his gaze. It came from someone in my family. The world dropped out beneath her feet. Her lungs refused to fill. No, she whispered. No. Ethan, please don't. Your father's treatment was canceled from a private account connected to the Huxley family network. Her vision blurred. Her knees weakened. She stumbled back a step, shaking her head violently. Don't say it. Just don't. Kiara, I can't. She backed farther, breath shallow. I can't hear this. Not from you. She turned away, covering her mouth with her hands as memories crashed over her, the whispered threats, the anonymous letter, her father's sudden turn for the worse, the feeling of being played like a pawn. She squeezed her eyes shut. No more, she choked out. I've already lost too much. I can't lose any more. Ethan moved to her slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Kiara, he murmured, I'm telling you because the truth will keep you alive, not bury you. She shook her head harder. I've heard enough. He hesitated, then gently cupped her chin, lifting her face. Her eyes brimmed with tears she refused to let fall. Ethan's own voice cracked as he whispered, if someone in my family caused your father's death, if someone forced you to choose between him and me, I will not stop until I know who. I will tear apart every file, every lie, every person responsible. I'm not afraid. But I am, Kiara whispered. He leaned his forehead against hers, breath trembling. I know. His thumb brushed her cheek feather light. And I'm here. That simple sentence, quiet and honest, hit deeper than any declaration of love. Her body sagged forward, forehead resting against his. She hated how good it felt, how right, how terrifying, because she knew letting him in again was like opening a door that might never close. Ethan spoke softly, as if coaxing her out of hiding. Kiara, you don't have to give me everything. Just give me enough to stand beside you. Her voice cracked in the tiniest whisper. I'm scared. He kissed her forehead, slow, reverent, like a promise. I'm scared too, he murmured, but I'm not going anywhere. Silence wrapped around them, intimate and fragile. Truth, fear, love, pain. They swirled in the air like a storm, gathering momentum ready to break. Kiara finally stepped back, wiping her cheeks, steadying her breath. When she met Ethan's eyes, something had changed. She wasn't running, not yet, but she wasn't standing still either. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling, if you keep digging, if you uncover the truth, it might destroy you, destroy us. Ethan's jaw tightened with relentless resolve. Then let it, he said, because living in the dark already destroyed too much. Kiara's heart twisted painfully. She realized in that moment, whatever storm waited ahead, it wouldn't spare either of them. And deep down, she knew. This was only the beginning. Ethan's penthouse was the kind of place people whispered about, glimmering marble floors, high ceilings, glass walls that made the city look like it worshipped him. But tonight, it felt strangely human. Maybe because Kiara was in it. Lucky bolted across the wide living room, sniffing every corner like he'd just inherited an empire. His little paws clicked loudly on the polished floor, but neither Ethan nor Kiara paid him much mind. Kiara stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, both hands resting lightly on the glass. The city sprawled beneath her lights, shimmering like distant stars. But her reflection was what Ethan watched. She looked like a ghost made of strength and heartbreak, the kind of woman who had survived a war alone. Ethan approached her quietly, each step deliberate. Kiara. She didn't turn, didn't move, but her shoulders stiffened just enough for him to know she heard him. He stopped beside her, the heat of his presence slipping under her skin. I never stopped loving you. It came out soft, too soft, for someone who had spent years pretending he didn't bleed. The confession hung between them, raw and unpolished. Kiara released a shaky breath, eyes still fixed on the skyline. You say that now, because I'm falling apart, she whispered. Because you think I need comfort. Don't use tenderness as leverage. His chest tightened. This isn't kindness, Ethan murmured. It's longing. She turned, then slow, cautious, as if she feared what she might find in his eyes. But they were just Ethan's eyes. Blue, steady, maddeningly sincere. Why didn't you look for me? She asked, hurt crawling into her voice, despite her attempt to hide it. I did. He stepped closer, gently taking her hand. I searched everywhere. But you changed your number. You moved 4 times. Every time I got close, you were gone. She winced. She knew it was true. But at the time, running had felt like the only way to survive. I thought... Kiara hesitated. I thought you chose someone else. Ethan blinked. The shock, then confusion, then dawning realization passed over his face like quicksilver. What other woman, he asked, genuinely baffled. Kiara swallowed, forcing herself to steady her breath. I saw you, she whispered, with a woman, at a bridal boutique. You were carrying a gown. For a moment, Ethan stared at her. Then a sound broke from him. Not cruel, but wounded amusement. Kiara, that was my sister-in-law. My brother's fiancée was sick that day, so he asked me to pick up the dress. Kiara's heartbeat stumbled. She opened her mouth, but the humiliation, the relief, the ache of what she lost crashed into her all at once. Ethan took a step toward her, reaching for her hand again, and because of that, he said softly, because of a misunderstanding, you left. She shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. No, she whispered brokenly, not just that. What then? She finally looked him in the eye and he saw it. The wound she hid, the truth she had carried alone. Your mother came to see me, Kiara said. She told me that if I walked away from you, my father's treatment would continue, that he would live. Ethan's face drained of color. He staggered, a half step back, not from impact, but from devastation. Kiara, his voice cracked. No. God, no. If I had known. But you didn't, she said, tears slipping free at last. I chose between you and my father, and I lost both. The words ripped the air open. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Ethan crossed the distance and pulled her into his arms. She tried to push him away at first, something instinctual defensive, but her hands trembled and her strength faltered. His embrace was firm, protective, heartbreakingly gentle. You shouldn't have faced that alone. He whispered into her hair, I'm sorry. Kiara, I'm so damn sorry. A quiet sob escaped her small fragile. The first one she had let slip in years. Her fingers clutched his shirt, as if afraid he'd disappear if she let go. He held her tighter. For a long moment, they stayed like that, 2 people who had broken each other. 2 people who still fit together like unfinished halves. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks were wet, but her gaze was steadier. Ethan cupped her face thumb, sweeping a tear away. Kiara. She shook her head weakly. Don't. But the word died on her lips, because Ethan leaned in and kissed her. Soft, slow, devastating. Not greedy, not demanding. Just a kiss made of years they had lost, and a love neither of them had managed to bury. Kiara's breath hitched as she melted into him, her hands gripping his shoulders, pulling him closer. Ethan tightened his arm around her waist, deepening the kiss just enough to make her knees weaken. Lucky barked somewhere behind them, excited, oblivious, cheering them on like a tiny furry chorus. They broke apart only when breath became a necessity. Both panting, both trembling. Ethan's forehead rested against hers. If you still love me, he whispered, even just a little, don't run again. Kiara parted her lips. But before a single word could form, the penthouse door swung open. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, face like thunder. Ethan, he snapped, we have a problem. Ethan straightened, jaw tightening. What now? Nathaniel stepped forward, dropping a thick file folder onto the coffee table with a heavy thud. The person who sent the fake report about Kiara, it wasn't an outsider. Kiara froze. Nathaniel continued, voice hard. They're inside the company, close to us, very close. A chill ran through Kiara. Someone she saw every day. Someone she trusted. Ethan clenched his fists. Who, Nathaniel didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward Kiara. This is for her to see. Kiara's fingers shook as she opened the folder, and then her breath stopped. Her heart plummeted. On the page was a face she recognized instantly. A colleague, a friend, someone she had confided in, someone she had trusted the most. Her voice cracked as she whispered the name. No, not them. Her world tilted violently. She felt Ethan beside her even before he touched her, solid, steady, ready to catch her. But Kiara was no longer sure she wanted to be caught. Because betrayal from an enemy hurts, but betrayal from someone you trust, that destroys you. Kiara's fingers trembled as she held the folder. She didn't need to flip through the pages. She didn't need to analyze the timestamps or signatures. The face staring back at her was enough. Layla Harper, her closest friend, her confidant, her first ally at Huxtech, the person who bought her soup when she was sick, who covered her shift when she had to take Lucky to the vet, who hugged her the day she officially passed her trial period, the person she trusted the most. Kiara's knees weakened. The world tilted in one violent sweep. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. Layla would never. She's not. But her voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. Ethan immediately stepped forward, steadying her by the waist before she collapsed. Kiara, he said softly. Breathe. But Kiara wasn't sure she could. Memories of Layla flooded her mind. Gentle smiles, shared lunches, whispered jokes between meetings, and suddenly each memory felt poisoned. I know her signature. Kiara, whispered, voice shaking. She helped me update my old HR files the day I transferred departments. She's the only person who knew my old ID. Nathaniel nodded grimly. We monitored her activity for 2 weeks, he said. Cross-referenced logins, access points, IP trails. He paused. And Kiara, we have her on camera, speaking to the man in the hoodie. The words hit her like a blade between the ribs. Her lungs stuttered. Layla, the stalker, the false report. Her sanctuary of trust crumbled with one name. Ethan's voice softened. Kiara, don't jump to conclusions yet. But Kiara shook her head, shutting her eyes tightly. It was her, she whispered. I know it. A deep, suffocating hurt knotted inside her chest. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. Why does everything in my life turn into a nightmare? She murmured, the words spilling out like a confession. Ethan stepped closer. Not everything. She opened her eyes. Ethan's hand rose, brushing the faintest touch along her cheek. She flinched instinctively, but he didn't move away. He kept his hand there, steady and warm, waiting for her to breathe again. You're scared, Ethan said gently. Not of Layla, not of the... His gaze held hers, unwavering. You're scared of loving me again. Scared of losing me again. He wasn't accusing her. He was simply telling the truth she had never dared to speak aloud. Her chest tightened painfully. Ethan, Kiara whispered, if I trust you again, if I let myself fall, I won't survive losing you a second time. He took her hand and placed it over his chest. His heartbeat slammed strong and sure against her palm. I'm not going anywhere, he murmured. You're home, Kiara. I've been wandering for 4 years looking for something I couldn't name. And it was you. Her breath caught at the sincerity in his voice, open, unguarded, piercing straight through her walls. Before she could answer, Nathaniel's phone buzzed. Loudly, shattering the fragile moment, he answered, listened, then stiffened. Ethan? He said, eyes darkening. She's gone. Kiara's head snapped up. Who? Layla Nathaniel replied. She left the city 20 minutes ago. No notice. No official leave filed. But before she left, he held out his phone. She left a message for Kiara. Kiara's blood ran cold. What message? Nathaniel handed the phone to Ethan, who read the text silently. His jaw twitched. His eyes narrowed with a fury so cold it sent a shiver down Kiara's spine. He read aloud, if you think Ethan belongs to you, you're wrong. I've waited 4 years, and I'm not losing him to someone like you. The room fell into a violent silence. Kiara felt the words slice through her sharp, intimate personal. It wasn't just professional sabotage. It wasn't even jealousy. It was obsession, targeted, specific, vicious. Her throat-constricted breath reduced to fragments. Why would she? Kiara tried to say, but her voice broke. Why would she do this? Ethan caught her before she slid to her knees. He wrapped his arms around her, tightly, protectively, fiercely. Kiara, listen to me, he said, voice low, thick with emotion. This isn't your fault. She didn't believe him. Layla's message echoed in her skull until it hurt. Ethan held her face between his palms, forcing her to meet his eyes. She's jealous, he said. And jealous people do cruel things. When they convince themselves they're entitled to someone they can't have. Kiara's breath came out in shivers. But why me? Because she saw what I didn't, Ethan whispered. She saw how much I still loved you. The honesty of it shuddered through her. He tilted her chin up gently. Kiara, look at me. She did. And his next words shattered her last defenses. I choose you. Only you. Not her. Not anyone else. Kiara's tears spilled freely now, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, believed, wanted. Ethan wiped them away with his thumb, then pressed a tender, lingering kiss to her forehead. Give us a future, he whispered. Not one built on fear or silence. A real one. With truth. With healing. With you. And with Lucky, because he clearly approves of me. Lucky barked from across the room, as if on cue, tail wagging in wild excitement. Kiara let out a shaky laugh, one hand covering her mouth. Ethan, she managed, through tears, you're impossible. Stubborn, he offered. She nodded. At the very least. Persistent, he added with a soft grin. She nodded again. He leaned closer, lips brushing her ear. Hopelessly in love with you. She froze. Then trembled, then melted. Her voice came out barely a breath. Yes. Ethan smiled. Slow, warm, breathtaking. Then Kiara finally whispered the words she'd been terrified to say. Then, let's try again. His arms wrapped around her immediately, crushing her against his chest like he feared she might vanish into smoke. She clung to him just as tightly. Lucky barked triumphantly, doing laps around their feet. Outside the towering window, rain began to fall, soft and cleansing, painting the city in silver. Two souls who had lost each other 4 years ago now stood together, fragile but unbroken, choosing to try again. Not perfect, not healed, not done with the storms waiting ahead, but together, and for the first time in years, that was enough. To be continued.